Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gratitude Podcast. I'm honored to have a friend of mine here, Nichole Sylvester. I met her in Fiji at a Tony Robbins event. And then shortly after that, we had lunch in Los Angeles. And she told me about these wonderful plans that she has to change the world. And I've been kind of watching her over the last several years since that lunch. And she's been doing that. She's created a program called Miracle Minded Podcast. And she's been helping humans remember their divinity, helping people awaken. And we're really honored to have Nichole here to talk a little bit about this to help our audience to become awakened. Welcome, Nichole.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's always a delight to see you. I've seen you at a few Dr. Joe events too since then. So I just always see you, always good energy, always appreciate you.
Well, and you have great energy. Where are you at right now? You've been moving around quite a bit yourself.
I do. I was traveling for 3 months. I'm in the LA area right now, though.
Okay. So tell us, when I met you in Fiji at that Tony Robbins event, as I recall, that was one of your you were kind of new to the Tony Robbins world.
It was my first event.
It was your first event. You went to Fiji for Life and Wealth Mastery.
Someone gifted it to me.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to that place? You have an amazing book and you have an amazing story. Go ahead and share whatever you feel comfortable sharing as sort of an introduction to, how you got to Tony Robbins and then became this beautiful miracle worker.
Thank you. Yeah. So my story, I like to say, now, yes, I consider myself spiritual teacher, guide, facilitator. I've definitely helped thousands of women, a few men in my programs over the years. But before that, my life was not very much like that. I actually grew up in a home that was very violent. My mom would have black eyes and things like that from my dad. There was crimes and just addiction, and it was really chaotic. And I actually took on those same patterns into my young adult life. I found myself in multiple abusive relationships, and I developed this belief that men that love you also hurt you sometimes, which obviously is not the truth, but I took that on as that's just what I knew.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I got involved in a lot of things. I also was breaking some rules and doing things. I was basically very destructive. I just didn't have a connection to myself or care. So fast forward, I find myself living in Las Vegas, partying all the time, living quite a wild life, and I end up meeting my daughter's father. We met, right away, we connected, and it was great at first, and then I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, I decided I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to do this. And he became violent. I thought he was going to be different, but he was another violent relationship. And it was when my daughter was born, this is back in 2005, that I saw her and I realized I promised myself that if I ever have kids, I'm never going to put them through all these things. I remember being a child, even a teenager, and just feeling so resentful and frustrated that my parents just didn't choose better and how much it hurt us, me, my brother and sister.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I knew that I had to do something different, but at the same time, can be really challenging for a woman to get out of that cycle. So fast forward, my daughter was about 2, and I had a bunch of different busted lips, black eyes. I was hurt a lot, but there was one event where nothing really big happened. It was just a moment of frustration, and her father threw a wooden toy at my head. And I ended up at the ER with 10 staples at the crown of my scalp. And it was then where I just knew that this man could kill me. It was just such a traumatic event. But at that time, he wouldn't let me leave with my daughter for 3 weeks. So eventually I escaped with my daughter. And interestingly enough, I went back to Pennsylvania. He murdered a woman that he was dating 6 weeks later. And I share this because if anyone's listening and maybe someone in your life is going through this, or maybe it's a child, grandchild, or a distant family friend, you think as a woman sometimes, well, they wouldn't ever kill me. They'll get over it. They'll get better. There's hope. But for me, I got out just in time.
Yeah.
So that happened. That set me on a journey to move to Los Angeles and just find a normal life. And this is a few years later, I met you, Robert. So I go to Los Angeles, don't really know anyone there. I go there with my toddler. It wasn't easy. I'm working bartending and things like that. And then I decide I want to do something different, and I get a job in a financial at a financial institution. And in that, I started to do personal development work because I was around people that were inspired and they were trying to grow their businesses. But at that time, no one knew about my past. I had tried to just put it all into the past and say, time heals all, move on, don't tell anyone about this. But I ended up getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I was actually having very bad panic attacks. I started developing agoraphobia, which is like you can't go out in open spaces. I would go to cross the street at a red light in Los Angeles and be like afraid to cross the street. So I'm losing weight. I was 28, I think, and I felt like I was 68 years old. And not a healthy one, a bad one. So I go to the doctor and all these things, and they're just like, you need to take this medicine. They put me on antidepressants, and I felt like a zombie. And I got to the point where I was just deteriorating so bad. And one of my friends mentioned to me, why don't you try this spiritual center? And I thought, that sounds like BS, really. Like, if none of these medicines are helping me, how is a spiritual center going to help me? But I got so desperate that I actually went, and that was the impetus that everything just changed. And then later I met you, Robert. So I would say that's what kind of led me. But I will say this, at that spiritual center, I was carrying all of these things that I had hidden. I had a belief about myself that I was broken, I was damaged, that people kept doing this to me. There's something must be wrong with me. And that was making me sick. But there was something at this spiritual center that changed my life. And the reverend that leads it is Michael Beckwith, for anyone that knows him.
Agape?
Agape. He said, there's a part of you that can never be damaged, tarnished, or broken, no matter what has happened to you. And that just landed for me. And that was like the little medicine I needed to be like, let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
And that just set me on a journey.
Wow. I remember little bits and pieces of your story, but you've written an amazing book too. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. Two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One is more of a workbook for female entrepreneurs. So my book, my memoir, O Shift, The Journey from Chaos to Consciousness, that was a book I read. I wrote that book when I got to the point of I had my business, is starting to work. And I wanted to share the journey because I know that there's a lot of people that can relate to the things in there. And I know for me, in my darkest suffering, I looked around for people that are proof and evidence that I can do better, that I can be better. And I think that there's it's so easy for us to share our shiny pieces and say, look at me, look what's great in my life. And it can be hard to share the parts where it's like, I felt like I was nothing there. I felt like I was just so unworthy there. And I wanted to take women on a journey of what it's like to truly come back home to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what that book is about. So it's a story. It's intense. I'm really proud of how it came out. People read the 300-page book sometimes in 24 hours because they say they can't put it down. But it is a journey through my life and all of the wild and crazy things. And then still, I was able, with my own willingness and devotion, to find my divinity. And that's just the me that really isn't damaged or broken, that actually has so much to offer and give. But I had to become the person that could access those gifts. Yeah.
So how does someone find their divinity?
I think the first thing is having a willingness to look for it, because you're going to find what you're looking for. So if you're willing, and I think that's the thing, like you could be in the darkest time. And I've even had what feels like bottom out moments in the last 12 years since I started my spiritual journey. Just things happening, my mom passing, or hard times in business, or, just ego death kind of things. And it's like, I still come back to, all right, what am I focused on? And am I willing to believe that there is a part of me that is divine, that is infinite, that's connected to source? And if my heart's still beating, I always tell myself that I'm still creating.
You have a podcast, the Miracle Minded podcast. How's that going?
That has been great. It's evolved. It started off as Shift show back when my book came out, and then it turned into Harmonious Hustle as I started doing more business coaching. And then now I'm just landed at Miracle Minded, and that's where we are, because I really believe, especially in these times, people have to be reminded that we do have this power and that we can co-create miracles through us all the time, and that we are a miracle. So it's been going really well.
What are some of your miracles in the last couple of years?
Well, there's so many. First, being alive, being healthy. I'm grateful for that.
Yep.
I would say a miracle to me is truly like a shift in perception. So I had a huge one on my 40th birthday 2 years ago. And all of a sudden, I don't know, I just saw differently. It was like a radical maturation where I just started seeing what was really important to me in life.
Yep.
And it just shape shifted my entire life. I mean, at first it was kind of startling because it changed a lot, but it was a shift where I could just see like the simplicity in my life and what was really valuable, what was really important. And it changed the fabric of my life. So I would say that was one of the biggest ones.
So give me an example of something that shifted for you, because, more than 2 years ago, I thought you were having an amazing life, and all of a sudden you've got this miracle shift. So what shifted there for you?
Well, it was amazing. So I think it's just like, life evolves, but I didn't know it because, as you likely know, like, we have these things and we're unconscious to them. They're just like drivers. But I was very driven by like wanting to achieve, wanting to perform, wanting to have certain dollar amounts, numbers, things in my business. And I was like taking myself almost through, I would say it was fun at first, and then it became more hellish, like creating these making these huge investments, stressing myself out, being worried about these things. And I just thought, well, that's what you do when you want success. And I'm telling you, within like 48 hours, there's something that happened in me. I just was like, what am I doing? This isn't it. What's really important is, my health, my family, and then also making an impact.
So did you surrender?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was that shift came, but I fought it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, because now I don't have the same passion or drive to make money that I had. So that was like something I had to adjust to. So it was an unfolding surrendering. It was almost like a shift from external power to finding internal power.
Okay. And you've had some retreats in Bali and other places?
Yes. So my Bali retreat, we're going to be leading the fourth one coming up. We took a pause. The last one I did was just like literally 2 weeks before the lockdown.
Okay.
So
that was the last one.
That was the last Bali retreat. I've led a bunch of retreats since then. I led a silent meditation retreat in Temecula. I've led a few at Miraval resorts, but those were with my clients, so they weren't really promoted. It was like people inside my mastermind.
Yep.
But the Bali retreat is like my big kind of public retreat. Like, it's really fun.
Yeah.
You went to Bali, right?
I did go to Bali. I went to a Tantra retreat there that was life-changing for me. This receiving love exercise from God or the universe or source. And it's inspired me that I want to take people there. So we just actually announced today that my next transformational trip will be to the Philippines and Bali starting January 25th. You should come with us.
Oh my God. That's when my Bali retreat starts.
Oh, then we can meet
January
there.
25th to the 30th.
Okay.
That's amazing.
We're starting in the Philippines, so I don't think we get to Bali till like February 1st.
That's amazing. I love that you guys are going to, you're going to 2 different places.
Yes.
Bali, it's special.
It is very special. So what do you do in your retreats?
So my retreats are really about, first off, leaving the patterns and habits and the you that you are at home, leaving that behind and really just opening up to the curiosities of who are you? What does your heart really desire? Who do you really want to be? And like really inviting that forward. But we also, we do some of the Balinese, things like the temple, the
water temples,
temple, which is so always life-changing.
Yes.
We do that. But then we do a lot of circles. It's more like feminine magic. We hold hands, we sing, we
just
pray.
For women.
Because it's kind of a very feminine thing to do. It's to drop in and hold hands and sing to each other.
Yep.
so we do that. I did co-host a Peru retreat many years ago, and it was co-ed, and it was fabulous. But with women getting together, women at my age, we're going through different hormonal changes, and some of our kids are leaving the house and going to college. So we get to really drop into some of those intimate conversations. So it's really a returning to love and just seeing, what does love have to teach you? If you can love yourself and love all these judgments and just kind of soften all of that harshness that we tend to carry or that's projected on us, what will then emerge and blossom. And that's what the retreats are. And we have fun too. I mean, I'm a silly person, so we have fun.
You are a silly person.
Yeah.
Well, that makes it fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how old is your daughter now?
She's going to be 19 in like just over a week.
Well, that's what I calculated because you said 2005 is 2004. That's 19 years old. Is she going to college or already there?
She's not. She's not going to college. The reality is she has never been really that academic.
Okay.
I wasn't either. So I think she's more entrepreneurial. So she's kind of figuring that out. But
is she still home with you?
She is home with me, and she likes it. And I keep telling her, we got to get you doing some things. I know you like it.
Has she participated in your retreats or she know what you're doing?
Yeah. So she's been really involved, partly because, I was solo parent. So when everything, I mean, she didn't have a weekend at dad's. She didn't have weekends at grandma's, although she would go home to Pennsylvania to visit my mom when she was alive for like a period. But it was really just us, which has given us a very unique relationship, which is really beautiful. And she was forced to do a lot of things with me. So going to a lot of agape events with me, but also us doing a lot of rituals, me taking her to sound baths and things like that from an early age. But now she came to Bali, assisted me there, and she assisted me at my silent retreat and at my Miraval retreat. She's worked at my events, like my weekend events. So yeah, she's in it. She resisted a little bit, but I think by the time she's like 24, she'll be loving it again.
Okay. Some of my mentors have said that I need to go to a silent retreat. And I can't even imagine doing something like that. Like, how does someone that is an engineer, has that engineer mentality, go to a silent retreat and shut their mind off of thinking about how to design something, create something, or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to shut it off. It's more about watching it and really noticing what comes up. Because the thing, I went to silent retreats 2 times a year for 6 years. And I tell you, changed my life. Like, the fabric of who I am. And it also brought up a lot. Like, I remember going to my first one and came home and so much changed. Number one, I removed all my TVs, which now I'm not like that. I'll watch Netflix and stuff. But I was just like, it was so interesting being in silence and then going to have meals. That was the most awkward part when I first got there, is like, you're at a public meal, no one's talking. And the funny thing is, I went to the first one by accident. I thought that it was a meditation and yoga retreat. And this is kind of how I ended up at Tony Robbins, which I didn't expect. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But I get to the retreat and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. We sit down to eat. And I was being talkative and people were ignoring me. And then I saw the sign that said, in loving silence. And this was before the retreat started. It was like the little meal you get. And then I was like, what? And then we got to the actual welcome and they're like, we are in silence for the next 3 days. Please respect that. And I just was like, what the heck? I actually had an anxiety attack that night because this was at the beginning of my journey. There was so much I hadn't faced. And when you're silent, everything that you've been distracting yourself from, it comes to say, hello, I'm here. I need your attention. So I would say, I think that I hate to use the word should, but I think it would be beneficial. You love Dr. Joe. But the thing is, sometimes I have to take space from Dr. Joe because he's guiding versus in a silent retreat. And that's why I love silent meditation. It's opening up to, what does infinite intelligence have to say to you?
And I am taking a break right now from Dr. Joe, but it was kind of funny when you said that you weren't sure or what you got yourself into or that it was a silent retreat. When I went to the Tantra retreat, I had no idea what that was. I thought it was a meditation thing. And the night before, I'm filling out the questionnaire and it's asking me questions that I go, what am I getting myself into?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
It's perfect for you.
Well, I don't know what that means, but
no, I mean, you signed up for it, so it was just meant for you to.
Well, and that's what I think is that everything in your life unfolds exactly the way it's meant to unfold. Sometimes there's some really terrible, harsh things like you shared with us about your early childhood and upbringing. And I'm sitting there, I have tears in my eyes. It's heart wrenching to me to hear that. And yet, as Tony often tells us, is that everything have to happen exactly the way it did in order for you to be the person that you are today. And you're an amazing person.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's like, that's why I do have a lot of trust in life. And that's why I think that even when I teach manifestation, it's a little bit different because it's like, we can try to manifest all those things right now, but there's a unique mystery to the way that life feeds us situations and experiences. And there's like a preparation and an unfolding. And we never know what a situation is going to bring. It's just interesting. So, same thing with the Tony Robbins thing. The reason why someone gifted that to me when I was working at New York Life and I barely had any money myself, I was like scraping by. I was inspired to create a foundation or a fundraiser for a foundation called Smile Train. And I did it and I gathered all these people, like was cold calling people, getting people there. And I raised all this money. And one of the people from there said, I see what you're posting online, these inspired things. I think that you should go to Tony Robbins. I looked it up. I saw it was in Fiji. I'm imagining I'm going to be meditating, going to yoga, drinking a drink on the beach. It was the opposite. And it was a harsh reality for about 2 days. I was like, I get there and it's like, a little shot of lemon or wheatgrass and a shot of oil. And then they're jumping on trampolines and playing loud club music. I'm like, what is this place? So that was my first intro to Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
But then I loved it and it was life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing.
Sure. So what are your dreams nowadays? What are you working on? What do you want to do? You're still super young. You got, many, many years to create something. What are some of your dreams?
Yeah. So one of my dreams is I would say like on terms of smaller feeling dreams, I would love to get a book published. Like I publish my own books. And I have a book that I want to write and I would love to get it published by a publisher just because it's so much more support when you don't have to do it all on your own.
Sure.
So I'd say that's one of my dreams. But also I would say beyond having my work and my messages reach millions of people and working with people in a really impactful way, I would love to have a space where I can just take in a bunch of dogs. I love dogs so much. And, there's so many dogs at the shelter. And I have 2 rescues and I love them so much. I foster dogs. I would just love to have a place where I can just have all the dogs come, whether it's a rescue or a sanctuary. But I would say that's one of my like long-term visions, dreams, and lots of other things, traveling the world.
Yeah. Where do you want to travel in the world now? Because you've traveled quite a bit.
I've never been to Europe because I go to all these spiritual places multiple times.
Yeah.
So I've been to India twice. I've gone to Bali like 5 or 6 times, Peru, Costa Rica a couple times, like all these places, but I've never gone to Europe. I want to go definitely exploring in Europe. I want to go to Antarctica, like an Antarctica cruise. That's one of my things. The Passage of Drake or whatever they call it looks a little, scary, but I can get through it.
Yeah. It might be a little bit cold.
Yeah. I was just looking randomly at, this is a little different, but Outward Bound, they have these like expeditions for adults where you can just, so my friends aren't really interested. And I'm like, I want to go backpacking for 5 days or yes, I've been looking at stuff like that.
Yeah. And where do you want to take your business?
I want to take my business. I mean, right now it's kind of just going through a pivot because I was talking very much about spiritual business and even money, like money miracles, which is great. I'll probably go back to that. But right now, I'm really called to take people on deeper spiritual journeys. So it's kind of like coming back into a straightforward spiritual practices, principles, and like deepening in terms of like energetics, understanding your body, the language of energy, moving through your body. All of that stuff I feel like is very helpful when you want to heal your body. If you're dealing with sickness, old emotional baggage, things like that. So that's where I'm taking it. And I mean, I see having more bigger events, co-ed events, like weekend events, where people are just dropping into a really loving frequency, and a soft one, not one where we're necessarily getting super hyped up and amped up, but like, what does it look like to me? It's like in that like softness, no armor, really deep connection and intimacy. Like those things are life-changing to me.
Yeah.
So creating and cultivating that, but I keep it loose because it's like this, I let spirit lead me. So I can have all these 5-year plans, but sometimes they get crushed by life, by just like surrendering.
Have you heard of a energy parasite?
Probably along the way, more like something just eating away at your energy.
Yeah. So an intuitive told me that they think I have a parasite, an energy parasite. And I go, oh, geez,
Do you think that?
I don't think that, but this person did.
Yeah, but that's why we have to be mindful. I have like strong boundaries on intuitives telling us stuff about ourselves. And that's probably because it's important to. Like, I took a medical intuition course, and the doctor that's teaching it, Dr. Norm Shealy, he actually had passed on now, but he was sharing that when he was teaching these things, all of these intuitives would reach out to him, and one of them would say, you have leukemia, you have this. And just because they're feeling intuitive or psychic, they're just projecting stuff. So what I always tell my clients is tune into you. Does that feel true? And if it resonates, explore. But we can't just take someone else's anything as truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. So if you have a message for any of our audience listening today, and I like to say this because I just found out about this last week, that the Ratitude podcast is the number 11 podcast in Argentina in the health and fitness category, which I go like, I had no idea anyone in Argentina would even listen to something like this. So
I think you need to have a retreat down there. Yeah. Because you have a club down there.
Well, and I'm learning Argentine tango right now, which is kind of interesting.
Wow.
But if you had to give sort of a final message for our audience here around anything, what would it be that would change their life like that?
I think the one thing that's coming through, and I just shared this yesterday on my podcast, is no matter where you're at, whatever decision is on your heart, whatever's going on, just pulling your energy back and remember that you are equipped with a guidance system that knows exactly what you should do next. It knows exactly what you should do next. And it doesn't mean that you're going to know every step that's meant to be taken, but that next best step, the highest and best next path, that right way for your own evolution, the answer's within. So just really remembering that and not getting caught up in that little tizzy of, I don't know, or I'm lost or I'm confused, because that just creates more resistance in your mind and in your body. So there's something so spacious to me when I just remember, oh, that's right, I'm equipped and I have the guidance, and it's actually talking to me all the time. Also, I wanted to ask you, did you ever do an astro cartography? Is that what they call it? But it's like astro mapping.
I have.
Was Argentina on there for you?
I don't remember that at all, because this just kind of came up recently. And it's been a little bit since then. But if someone wanted to reach you to connect to either your coaching programs, your mentoring programs, your mindset, your retreats, and we'll put it in the write-up on this, but what's the best way to reach you? I
would say my email, which is Nichole with an H, so Nichole at NicholeSylvester.com. I am on Instagram a lot, so I respond to things on there. And then, of course, my website, NicholeSylvester.com, you can get all of my books, programs, the retreats there, and podcasts, etc. They're all there. Okay. Yeah, and some free resources.
Nichole, any final words?
No, just thank you. I'm grateful for you. I know that you just create a positive ripple of, you remind people to just smile. I think that, I don't know if you know that, but you are a demonstration of just living with, a good outlook, a positive outlook. And every time I see you, you're like a little beam reminding people of that, the way that you move about in crowds and things like that. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and honor to have you here, Nichole. I hope that you get your dreams, get to go to Antarctica and to Europe and anywhere else that your heart desires. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Robert.